again, everybody. Welcome to another exciting Daily December that's late. After getting almost caught up, I have succeeded in getting, I believe, 3 days behind, and a later Daily December will actually talk about that. But this is going to be officially, let's see. This is officially day 12, 2017. And I feel horrible, so I am going to try to lift my own spirits and yours by talking about and taking kind of a page from Pro Jared's book again of his D&D December. I am going to talk about the first tabletop D&D character I ever built and played for any extended period of time. The way this came about was I'd actually been watching Tabletop the first season and was really getting into it, and I had been playing Dungeons and Dragons video games forever. The first one I ever played was Dark Sun Shattered Lands, which is why Dark Sun is my favorite. But I'd never actually played the tabletop version of it. And Tabletop the show was really getting me into the idea of, I really want to try this. And they kept saying, go to your friendly local game store. And so I went to the Wizards of the Coast website, and they had this thing that could find the closest Wizards Play Network store near you. Wizards Play Network is this thing that they use to kind of track stores, and they give them special deals depending on how often they run. They bring in new players for Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. And it is the lifeblood of a lot of stores because it gives them, the ability to do things like sell books a week early and stuff like that for D&D, or they get discounts on Magic the Gathering, which is what keeps game stores afloat. Like anyone that is thinking about opening a game store, you need to sell Magic the Gathering cards. End of story. All right. So anyway, call up the local store. The store itself was about 15 minutes away from where I lived, 15-minute drive. So I'm like, oh, it's not too bad. And it was in an area that I was relatively familiar with because it was a pretty big area of commerce. A major interstate traveled through it. A major highway. It was an intersection of a major interstate and a major highway between the outskirts of Milwaukee, which Milwaukee, the city, is a relatively large city. When you talk about the greater Milwaukee area, it's massive. It's really, really big. And so this one city was right at the edge of it, and then at the edge of another relatively large city that I was living in at that time. So it was a pretty big place for, lots of businesses were there and stuff like that. I was very familiar with it. So I called them up and I said, hey, I've heard about this thing called D&D Encounters. Do you guys do that? And they're like, well, we have. This is back in 4th edition days where Wednesday nights Wizards of the Coast had a program called D&D Encounters, which was designed for people that didn't have time for a full-time campaign or new players or anything like that, where it was shorter adventures designed to be run in about 2 to 3 hours. And they would link together and form a story, but you could jump in and out anytime. So it was a really cool program that eventually turned into what's now the Adventurers League. Was kind of started with the D&D Encounters program. So anyway, I call him up and he says, well, yeah, we have stuff on Wednesdays. We have D&D Encounters. We're not sure if we have enough people to do it. I said, okay, well, I'd like to do this. Is there anything that I need or, that I should get? Well, you'll need some dice and you'll probably want, a character in that. But to be perfectly honest, the best thing for you to do, just come on into the store and talk to the people running it. They're really, really great. They'll help you with everything that you need. Just go ahead and come into the store. And so I did. I came in and I got to talk to the dungeon master, and he wasn't doing anything that night, but he's like, yeah, this is what we'll do, and this is the thing. Just come in at about 6 o'clock next Wednesday. If you don't have a character, I'll bring one for you. Otherwise, he said, go to this website if you want to. It's $10 a month, but it gives you access to literally every D&D book printed for 4th edition. You will have access to 100% of it. For $10 a month. And I'm like, that's a great deal. Because a single book, they had them there, would run me like 30 to $40. So I'm like, wow, even if I only use this, and it had a character builder in it, so you could build your character there and not have to worry about, the complexities of it, and it would actually create you ability cards, and it was, because that was a 4th edition thing. So the character I created, his name was Talduin, and he was an Eladrin sword mage. The sword mage class did not translate directly to 5th edition, so we don't really have a sword mage, but Eldritch Knight is pretty close. Like, you could make an Eldritch Knight, and if you chose the right abilities, you could emulate what the sword mage was. But I like the sword mage for a couple of things. It was a guy with a sword that could cast spells. I am a huge fan of swords and spells. Like, any, sword-wielding wizard is my cup of tea. Really, really like that. And they had some cool features. Like, they had this thing called their sword bond, which it didn't have to be a sword. It could be any martial weapon, or any melee weapon. But they were called sword mages, so... But they had this thing called Sword Bond. And what that was if you spent an hour with your weapon, you would bond to it. And you had things like you could call it to your hand from up to, at like level 1, you could call it from like 100 feet away. So if like your sword is way the hell over there, you just point your hand and like use the force and zoomp, and your sword would come to you. It was super cool. And then they also had this thing called Aegises, where what it was you could, there was a mechanic in 4th edition called marking, and it was something that defenders would do, which were your tanks. They were the guys that were designed to take all the damage. What they could do is they could mark a bad guy, and anytime that bad guy attacked someone other than you, they would have a flat -2 to their attack roll. And thematically, it was kind of like you sitting there going, nah, come at me, bro. Come on, let's do this. So they had Aegises, which is a unique form of marking that would allow you to mark a target, and then other things would happen with it as well. And I chose, I can't remember what the Aegis, I believe it was the Aegis of Assault. So what it was I could mark a creature, and then if that creature did attack and successfully attacked another creature, I could just teleport over to them and attack them immediately, which was really cool. And then I had things like I had the equivalent of Green Flame Blade, which is in 5th edition, where I would attack them and I do some fire damage, and then I do extra fire damage to bad guys around them, and some other really cool stuff. I had Lightning Lure, which is another spell, so I could sit there and just like lasso them and bring them over to me. And then as an Eladrin, in 4th edition, all races had an encounter ability that they could use, which basically meant an encounter. You had 3 different kinds of abilities. You had At Will, which you just use over and over. You had Encounters, which you could use once per encounter, and you had to take about a 5-minute, they called it a short rest then. It had to be about, a minute to 5 minutes. So it was a really short rest. So just a slight breather between combat, and you got all those abilities back. And then you had what were called dailies, and dailies are really powerful, but you can only use them once a day. And I liked this system. It was really fun. It was easy to use. And so yeah, that was Talduin, and as an Eladrin he could teleport, and then I started building him more and more. And Sword Mage has also got a couple abilities that let them teleport. So he could be this really cool kind of teleporting guy that would be able to mark, bad guys and take all the damage. The issue with him was I didn't build him particularly well to be a tank. I built him a little bit more to do damage, and Sword Mages aren't designed to do damage. Or you can make them that way, but I didn't build them correctly. Which is easy enough. In 4th edition, you could actually change abilities and stuff like that every time you leveled up, so that if you did make a bad choice, you could fix it. Another thing I liked about it. But I never did, because I liked how the character, as much as the character wasn't as useful as he could have been, he was still fun to play. And so, and I roll horribly. I always have. So my tank was really, really ineffective at doing any sort of damage. I was simply there to be a hit point sponge. And as much fun as that sounds, I had to find other ways to make the game fun for me, because I wasn't doing really cool things. I was just getting hit in the face a lot. So what happened is when I first started missing with my sword, I took the sword bond to mean I was bonded to my sword. I went, no, I'm married to my sword. Yep, her name's Lucille. And anytime I missed, which was often, Lucille and I were having marital difficulties. And I kind of went with this. It started off as a joke, and it just kept going to the point where I would start having, like, when they were taking downtime and taking rests and stuff like that, I would be talking to my sword, trying to figure out, trying to work things out, because I wanted the marriage to succeed. And yeah, and so it started out as this very, like, he started out very much like a magical paladin. Like, he was lawful good. He was very much, there was actually one point where they had to interrogate a guy to get some information. And I told the party, I'm like, out of character, I can't be here for this. If you guys start torturing him, I'm going to have to stop you, because that is 100% against this character's belief structure. And they're like, yeah, sure. And so one of the characters just is like, hey, Talduin, look, shiny. I'm like, ooh, shiny. I'll go over here. Because I wanted the game to continue, and I knew what they had to do. And so I wasn't going to be that guy who's like, no, we shall never not do blah, 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 and kind of derails gameplay, just so they can kind of showboat their role-playing. I wasn't going to be that guy. So I'm like, guys, just please somebody, like, I'm still role-playing this character, but I'm not going to, he's not going to be able to watch you guys torture him. He's going to literally fight you guys off if you try and do that. And they're all like, yeah, sure, no, understand completely. That is totally within your character. That is how you've played him thus far. We're fine with just tricking him, because you've never been the smartest guy in the world. Despite the fact that, sword mages were intelligence-based, mainly. It was intelligence and dexterity were their two stats that they were good at. I never played him as an incredibly, because he had a low wisdom score, so I never played him as an incredibly, like, wise person. He had book smarts. And so, yeah, he was not the most difficult person to trick and manipulate. So anyway, as the campaign went on, and we played for, I don't know, like a year at least, and the campaign went on, people started, kind of ribbing on me for the fact that you realize, like, you're talking to your sword that's kind of weird. And I just leaned into the turn, and the characters started becoming more and more crazy. And so, yeah, it started off, well, I'm married to my sword. Well, now her name is Lucille. And then I just started becoming more and more just nuts. And there was one point where we fought a bunch of mechanical dogs. They were construct dogs. And the way 4th edition worked was magic items were everywhere. Everybody had magic items. You had to have, like, if you built a higher level than level 1 character, the way that you built them was you built the character, And then for your equipment, you would pick one magic item that was a level higher than you, one magic item that was a level that was the same level as you, and one magic item that was a level lower than you. And every magic item had an actual level that corresponded with your player level. So yeah, even building a level 2 or level 3 character, you started with 3 magic items. So it's very magic item heavy. You're constantly getting new stuff. And the DM would basically tell us, yeah, you found a level 4 magic item. Go ahead and just pick any level 4 magic item you want, because it's easier that way. And so I had picked up these gloves that let me do Mage Hand. And instead of something actually useful for the character, I picked up gloves to do Mage Hand specifically for this. So you fought these dogs. Oh, I also had a bag of holding, because I'm like, bag of holding, always useful. So we fought these dogs, and we killed them, and I turned to the dungeon master, and I go, is there enough of either of the two dogs to reconstruct their skull? Like, their mechanical skull. Like, it doesn't have to work or anything. I'm just, are there enough parts, like, for the outside to make it look like the skull is still there? He's like, sure. He had no idea what he was doing. So I go, okay, can I collect him? And he made me roll for it, and I rolled good. And I went and I collected enough parts for a skull. And then I used Mage Hand to basically act as a puppet for, basically turn the skull into a puppet. This mechanical dog skull was now a puppet because my character was becoming increasingly unhinged. And was starting to have problems even with his own ethos that he had to be lawful good and always had to do the right thing. And so I named the floating dog head, mechanical dog head, Mr. Fribbles. And Mr. Fribbles lived in my bag of holding, and whenever I wanted to say something but I couldn't because it would be against my character, against my lawful good character, Mr. Fribbles would pop out of the bag of holding and would go, "Oh, isn't that the stupidest thing I've ever heard?" And that was his voice, and so randomly in conversations, when I wanted to say something or I wanted to do something that I couldn't as a character do, Mr. Fribbles would come out. And the thing about it was I had Mage Hands so I could make it talk. So it was like in game, it was Talduin sitting there and making Mr. Fribbles talk, using Mage Hand. But I didn't have, there's another cantrip that you could get called Ghost Sound, which basically lets you throw your voice magically. I didn't have that. And so what would happen is I would use Mage Hand to make him talk and pop out of my bag, but I would have no way to throw my voice to him, and I did not have that particular skill or anything remotely close to it. So they would see my mouth moving, but I would be pretending that it was Mr. Fribble saying it, not me, because, again, I was becoming more and more unhinged as the campaign went on. And I was basically having a psychotic breakdown, or my character was, just as he kept going on. I was going crazier and crazier and crazier. So anytime I wanted to say something that didn't really fit with my character, Mr. Fribble would say it for me. And it annoyed the hell out of the DM. He hated Mr. Fribble with a passion. So eventually we get to a high enough level that I get a new sword. Because, again, 4th edition, you're constantly getting magic items. You're constantly upgrading your gear as well. It was very much like a World of Warcraft, Diablo type thing where you're constantly getting more new gear and stuff like that. And it really was required at higher levels to have really good gear. Unlike 5th edition, where you could technically be in base gear and still be super powerful because the power was transferred to the classes themselves instead of just having crap tons of magic items. So I finally get a new sword at like level 5 or level 6, something like that. And first time I used the new sword, I talked to my sword like I had been the entire campaign, and I called her Vera. And the DM goes, wait, what happened to Lucille? I said, well, Lucille was the name of my other sword. It didn't work out. We got divorced. I feel bad about it, but, I think this is the best for us. Veer and I, Veer is my new love. She will be accompanying me on adventures, and I think this is a good thing for me. Mr. Fribbles up.
Yeah, she's a lot hotter too.
Shut up, Mr. Fribbles.
Make me.
So that night, the DM sent me an email because we were really good friends. So he sent me an email and he goes, "No way are you getting away with this." And I said, "What?" He said, "No way are you just divorcing your sword. That sword has been like a major feature of your character. And just like throwing it away and casually saying, 'Oh, we got a divorce,' is not going to work." And so what the DM did is he wrote up this like 2-page long typed write-up of the divorce ceremony of the sword mage, where Lucille was carried through town on a bed of roses, and there was a ceremony, and the town, like he even put in, the townspeople were like, "What the hell is this?" "Oh, it's the sword mage divorce ceremony." "Who is he divorcing? Where's the woman?" "Oh, he's divorcing his sword." "He's married to his sword? What kind of nut job is this?" And so it was this really well constructed thing where it talked about the divorce and everything. And at the very end, he goes, "Oh, by the way, in the divorce, Lucille took half of your assets and got custody of Mr. Fribbles," and ended it. And so in one fell swoop, he was able to have a little bit of fun and get rid of the character he hated the most, which was Mr. Fribbles, because I was just constantly bringing him up and saying really random, off-the-wall stuff and non sequiturs and stuff like that with him, and he was just annoying as hell to everybody but me, because I was having a great time. I was having an absolute blast with my crazy sword mage that was getting crazier by the minute. There's some times when I wish I could have continued playing that character just to see where he would have eventually been once he hit level 10 or level 20 or level 30, because he just kept getting more and more crazy as stuff happened. And so by the end of it, he would have a lot of really cool magic items, but he would probably have very complex relationships with every single one of them. And like he anthropomorphized everything, and it was just, he was a fun character to play. Completely useless on the battlefield, but super fun character to play. So yeah, that was literally my very first D&D character was Talduin. That I played for any length of time, and he was awesome and amazing. And yeah, I may tell you more stories of Talduin later, because there's a couple others that were pretty cool that came out of that campaign. But that's where I'm going to end this video. I'm going to try and make a couple more today to actually catch up. We'll see how well that goes. Yeah. Anyway, that's all for me today. I'll see you guys next time. All right. Bye-bye.